Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers. We're here to talk Seahawks football. We've got a great show planned for you today. This is the first episode in a series of episodes that we are calling the Draft Prospect Series. We're going to start with the quarterback class of 2025 today. Lots of prospects to talk about. There's a couple favorites. There's a couple risers. We think there's a couple guys that are dropping for a few different reasons. We're here to talk about it all. Welcome in, Keith. How you doing?
Doing good. This is kind of the fun season, right? We're getting in, we're talking about prospects, we're going through position by position and getting our big boards put together, and it starts today. I mean, for the quarterbacks, which is an interesting group, and an interesting group for Seattle, given where they are in terms of, kind of being at the end of Geno Smith's time with the team and looking for a future.
Well, let's set it up that way then. Let's kind of talk about that briefly if we can, and we'll just what are the chances that Seattle takes a quarterback in this class, given the history of John Schneider, and we know that he's been interested in different quarterbacks over time. They've traded for Sam Howell. We know that Geno's limited as far as his time frame is concerned. He may be back in 2025, but beyond that, things get a little murky. And this isn't known to be the premier class. There's not going to be 6 prospects taken in the top 12 picks like there was in 2024, but there are some good looking quarterbacks out there, especially if you could take a season to kind of nurture and develop a guy behind a player like Geno Smith. I think there are a couple of ideal type prospects, and we can talk about that later on. But let's talk about Geno Smith just for a minute. There was an interview that came out where Mike McDonald said some things about Geno that kind of reiterated the idea that he was standing behind his quarterback. There was not going to be a question whether or not Geno was going to be back. He's our guy. We can win a championship with Geno. Just kind of, saying what he needed to say as a coach, getting behind his current quarterback under contract. But you felt maybe it was kind of just one of those generic statements that all coaches make.
It was a
what do you think?
Statement. I mean, the point in there where he's like, I can't wait to get to work with him. Like those are, like that's the kind of thing where that's a pretty definitive, we're ready to go. But at the same time, we have heard statements like that from coaches all over the league for the last 40 years, and then had the player get cut the next week. So it was a very clear statement that he backs Geno Smith. That doesn't mean that he's coming back, right? But it is him standing behind his guy, but it doesn't mean that ends up ultimately dictating which direction the team moves during this offseason.
Right. I agree with that. And I think that, John Schneider is the guy that's making the final decision on personnel moves and so forth. If he wants to overrule as head coach, then that's the way it goes in the NFL. I would think that they would be working in tandem, hopefully, and they both agree on a path. And I'm sure at this stage in the off season, they have a path. They know exactly what they want to do. Now, it may not work out that way, but they know what they want to do, how they want to execute it, and so on and so forth. Geno, at that $44 million a year number that the escalators put him at from 2024, it's very unlikely to me, and I think you, that he comes back on that number for a single season. I think the more likely scenario would be to add a couple of years to his deal, smooth out that cap number. I'm sure that they feel comfortable bringing him back where he was last year. Let's say $28 million, $30 million, somewhere in that range, if that's the cap hit.
but not
Um,
45.
correct. But they still want some maneuverability to be able to either trade him next season or get out of that contract in 2026. Um, so let's talk about now this draft class. Just an overview before we get into specific prospects. What to you is the likelihood that this is the season, this is the year that John Schneider does make a move to get a developmental quarterback or even a potential starter to be able to come in and take the Seahawks forward for the next 3 or 4 seasons at least?
Well, you said it already. This group is not as strong as last year's group. But the Seahawks tried to move up and move up a lot to get up and take a quarterback in the first round last year, and just couldn't get the trade to work to get put together. And so it didn't happen. Um, but that gives you an idea of John Snyder is looking to get his long-term future quarterback. Um, and I could see it being a thing. But in this particular, you're not going to move up far enough to get the top two guys, which are probably the two. There's only two guys with legit first round grades in this year's draft, and if you're not going to be able to move up to the top three picks to get that, now you're looking at a guy that you want to develop, and so you're looking for tools, you're looking for traits, things that you think you can get and turn into uh, a franchise guy, and then you're looking at developing them for a year before you throw them out there and have them play. So it would be a situation where you could see them both retaining Geno Smith and drafting a quarterback this year because it those two things can fit your timetable. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of second round kind of grades, guys that are good enough to be franchise quarterbacks if they develop, but aren't ready now, and so they're not going to probably go in the first round, or at least early in the first round. And so there's this is a good kind of group if you're looking for that. Um, Derek Carr
Second
is a good
second tier,
example.
yeah, second tier
Yeah,
kind of guys.
guys like
Yeah, no,
Derek
I
Carr who was a second round pick, or Kirk Cousins who was a fourth round pick, and developed into quality NFL quarterbacks.
I would throw caution out there just a little bit because we always start the off season with the idea that yeah, there's a few guys with first round grades, and then there's a bunch of guys in the second and third round, and then we always see that quarterback market,
Oh yeah.
the supply and demand issue with this position group take over. And
Mm-hmm.
after that combine, we see quarterbacks that shouldn't have gone in the first round end up going in the first round. A, because they've got a 5th-year option in the first round, but B, it's just the supply. It's like it's
Yeah.
so short. People and teams are so desperate to be able to at least take a shot at
So
a
there,
quarterback that's going to give them an opportunity. You'll see quarterbacks go way earlier than they should.
yeah, I mean, and that doesn't change the grade, right? They still have a second round grade, but they get drafted mid first round, or 12 overall is the case of Bo Nix. Or 10 overall is the case of JJ McCarthy. I had both of those guys with an early second round grade based on their tape, but they went, top 12 last year. And that is kind of what you're going to see. So there's going to be guys with that second, third round grade that might go um, to Seattle at 18. Um,
Yeah, so let's talk
because
about
that's
that.
because that's what the quarterback market does.
So let's talk about the two players at the very top, just so we can
Hmm.
kind of cover the bases a little bit. We're talking about Cameron Ward, former Washington State quarterback, moved around a little bit,
Yep.
ended up in Miami, 6'2", 223, somewhat athletic but not fast.
Yeah.
Really strong arm, but not athletic. Um, not really athletic. I mean, he's got like a 25.5 vertical,
Right.
and a 4.4 short shuttle, 4.44 short shuttle, which shows that he's not doesn't have a lot of agility. But here he is sitting at the top. Good for him. I don't think Seattle is in play
No.
at all for the first pick overall. Although I believe John Schneider would do whatever it took if it was like the guy he was absolutely 100% sure this was the franchise guy. He would do whatever he could to get involved in a conversation, but
Hmm.
still unrealistic to you'd have to throw away this draft plus 2025 2026 draft to even sniff
Yeah.
moving up from 18 to number one. And then
I don't.
Shadur Sanders. Oh, go ahead,
Yep.
Keith.
I was gonna say I look at that and I kind of comped him to Ben Roethlisberger, big, strong quarterback, but not athletic. Maybe hard to tackle because he's so big and strong, but isn't going to run away from anybody. Um, and which to me, I mean, that's not a bad comp to have. But people who are trying to say that he is Josh Allen, I think are going to be disappointed because Josh Allen can run. Like
Yeah,
he is a far better athlete. So, um, yeah, just something to think about as far as like, type of player.
but he would have, in last year's draft, I think he would have gone fourth or fifth. Behind Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. Obviously, there was a redraft. Jaden Daniels would go number one. Drake
Yeah.
May, Michael Penix is sitting there. There would have been a debate between who was better, Michael Penix or Cameron Ward, JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix. Obviously, those guys. Now
I would
you
have put
you
him, yeah.
redraft Bo Nix. Bo Nix probably goes top 4 or 5, right? So it's just kind of a crazy deal. But I would say Cameron Ward was probably ended up being either the fourth or fifth draft prospect in last year's draft, if he was in that draft.
Yeah,
So this isn't a great class.
you put him in that draft and he would be, I mean, but you're still talking these are guys that went top 12. So yeah, he's better than a guy that went top 12, but that still is pretty good. So,
Yeah,
um yeah,
yeah. But supply and demand is going to dictate that he's going to go number one overall, no doubt, probably
almost certainly. Yeah.
to the Titans, and then Sanders, we haven't talked about yet. Probably looking at no less than New York at number three, right?
Yeah.
And I like him, but I worry a little bit about the maturity level. In fact, I think he has got a higher ceiling than Cameron Ward. I think he's a little bit more consistent, but he's just a little immature. And I think he needs a little bit of time. I'm not sure if he starts right away. I think in New York, the demand is going to be high on
Hmm.
him.
I think that would be
The
a really
spotlight,
bad.
I
That would
think
be a
it would
bad
be.
pairing.
I do
Getting
believe that.
Deion Sanders' kid into that market in New York. I think
Mm,
he'll get. Um, I don't think that would do him any favors. Um, certain guys do well in New York, and certain guys don't. Um,
hmm
I I would love to see him in a smaller market where he can be himself and focus on football and not New York, where he's going to be asked to be Deion Sanders' kid forever.
The external pressure there is crazy. It really
Yeah,
is. No matter who you are, New York is just that market. But
yeah,
the one thing that is going for him is his accuracy. Completion
yes.
percentage was really high, 74.2. Kid can throw it, and he's got the
Mm-hmm.
option to run the ball a little bit, ball
Got some speed.
security.
Yep.
So there is opportunity there for him to be successful if he can keep that noise down. And I'm not
Yeah.
sure if he can at age 22. It's
Yeah.
just one of those deals, right? Especially if he's thrown into a starting situation.
Agreed. And I think that um, for him being able to come along a little slower, um, and God, I just want to take that pressure off of him and not send him to the Giants because I think he can be great. I think he can be outstanding. Um, but that New York market eats quarterbacks alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
This,
takes
it could ruin him. It could ruin him. Really.
yeah, it takes a special um, personality to survive there. I mean, the last quarterback to survive that market would be Eli Manning, um, and he just doesn't let anything bother him ever. He was the perfect guy to end up in that market. Um, but
Agreed.
I mean, as far as personality, and I would prefer if I would prefer Sanders goes anywhere else because I think
Uh-oh.
he could be really really good.
We lost each other for half a second there. Okay. So here's for me where the debate starts. Quarterbacks that are realistically available to Seattle, either at 18 or a slight drop back. Maybe Seattle picks up some draft compensation. I like that scenario when we run the mock drafts all the time. If you drop back, you're still kind of getting some quality there in the mid 20s, in addition to picking up a pick in the day two. Um, but this is where you could see some quarterbacks that are second tier guys that maybe have second round grades now move up into the first round. Seattle would be there. If they
Hmm.
like one of these guys, that would be an option, or picking later on at, 50, which is their natural pick, or 52, whatever it is. That could be there as well. 82, there might be a couple prospects there. So, depending on how you feel about this quarterback market, how you feel about Seattle's pressure to get one of these guys versus, free agency, or an undrafted prospect later on that you just kind of pick up. Maybe it's a third quarterback on your roster. You keep them on the practice squad, that sort of a thing. I, the more I think about this, especially if they can pick up an additional pick, the more I think maybe they draft one here moving back off 18, unless the pressure to draft the quarterback is so high, and quarterbacks are in such short supply, you end up with a player like Jackson Dart, or um, Will Howard,
Hmm.
maybe moving up into the back end of that first round, and a guy like Jackson Dart maybe even moving up to the point where he's drafted at 18 overall in Seattle. Let's talk about these prospects, and let's talk about one of the prospects I think has the most potential to fall in Jalen Milroe.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. I think of guys that are viewed in this range that everyone once you put the quarterback inflation on there, you're like, oh, first round pick. I'm like, I think it's more likely that he's going to go the other way and drop down and end up more third round. Um, guy is, um, at 6'2", 225, you'd think um, he's got a chance to be a um, a guy, but he doesn't look um, he doesn't look that big. He doesn't play that big. He's more of he looks thin and he's a runner more than a passer.
He did not
And
throw the ball well at all at the Senior Bowl. Plus, his
no,
hands are like
yeah,
8.75 or something like that. Tiny hands. Like, who was the prospect from Pitt that went to Pittsburgh Steelers a couple years ago?
um,
I can't even remember his name, but he had those small hands, and we were like, well, he's not going to be a prospect that we would be interested in. But Pittsburgh ended up drafting him in the first round, which was kind of
yeah,
crazy, and he's no longer there.
he was the only
But
quarterback taken in the first round that year.
yeah, right. And all that
Um,
whole entire quarterback class was crap. But um I feel that with this kid. Now, obviously he could have much more potential. I think he's got that elite athleticism. He's got a really cannon arm, but with those
hmm
small arms, his accuracy, his um footwork, mechanics, all that stuff need a lot of work. And I, there could be a team still that is enamored with him, and that option to be able to, run the RPO stuff with a quarterback like Jaden Daniels. I just don't think he has the tools that Jaden Daniels had as far as being able to throw the ball with any accuracy and timing, and touch,
Mhm.
and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I like you see, originally before all this kind of started and movement starting to happen with this class, he was looked at as being a fringy first round pick, uh, maybe high second round grade. I agree with you that I think that he's probably in the third round, potentially for a team, potentially, or a team that has extra picks that needs kind of a developmental guy on their roster, and they really are enamored with his skill set,
Mhm.
or it's a fourth round pick.
Well, the only thing I would say like that gives me pause about our prediction of that is Anthony Richardson, who I believe is a very similar kind of player, that athletic and can run and all those things, and um, but questionable arm talent in terms of being able to do that. And he went what, fourth overall? Um, and I mean, you saw how poorly that's worked out. But he's he still went top five. So that would be my one concern is someone's going to look at Milrose like um, just pure athleticism. He's going to go to the combine and just show off,
Right.
and someone's going to be like, "Wow!" And then suddenly he gets way overdrafted. But so I don't know it like as far as where he goes, he could go high. As far as where he belongs, like where his grade is, I've got him with like in round three. So that's my concern is that athleticism is going to wow somebody, and we'll see what happens.
So let's talk about Jackson Dart. So here's a
Hmm.
player with all the things you really like. 6'2", 225, same size as Milrow. But he's just kind of a different build. 4'8", 540 speaks to a guy that's probably going to rely on moving around the pocket a little bit more than scrambling, a
Hmm.
lot. But he can move for you and get the first downs and so forth. Nice thing about him, he's young, age 22. He's short armed though, which is concerning for me a little bit. 30 and 1/4 inch arms with a 20 or a 72 and 3/4 inch wing, which is very short, very compact, if you will.
Actually,
Um,
that doesn't bother me for a quarterback
really,
because you're not engaging with people, and actually the shorter arms with a quarterback, if you've got the arm strength, it can lead to um, a faster release, getting the ball out of your hands quicker from the time your the ball starts moving till it's released from your fingers. It'll cut your release time down, and the short arms just it does not bother me for a quarterback.
other than that, he's an interesting prospect for me. Now, if Seattle scouts him heavily and invests time, and he's the one, and they choose, I'll stand behind that 100%. He's
Hmm.
got all the tools that you kind of want to have as far as the upside stuff, and he's got all of the flaws that you would expect for a guy that has a second round grade. Arm strength is good, but it's not great. He's accurate, but he's still has room for improvement there. The footwork stuff, the production is okay. He kind of bails a little bit on, um, when he's pressured instead of stepping up in the pocket. So those things though are easy, not easy, but those are things that you can teach and develop. And that's what kind of a prospect he would be if Seattle were to take him. He wouldn't be a guy that would start day one. He would be a guy that you're getting ready to start day one in 2026.
Yeah.
So I would be interested in this guy and really kind of figuring him out and studying him a lot, and especially as a fit into Clint Kubiak's system. Um, and I think he would do okay in that system. I think he could be efficient. And I'm talking down the road here after he sits behind Gino or a quarterback like Gino for a year, and develop a guy. He's piqued my interest um, in that respect. I do like a couple of guys more that would be safer picks for me. What do you
Yeah, I
think?
mean, I think there are safer picks, but I don't think their ceiling is quite as high. I like Dart more than you do, I think. I think that he is a guy that has real potential to be very good at the next level. But you're right. There's development stuff. There's some footwork things that he needs to improve on. Um, he's good at creating off schedule when there's pressure and that kind of stuff. He moves around great, but he does tend to do things that you can do in college that you can't do in the pros, like throw back across his body and that kind of stuff. So I would want to remove that part from his game a little bit. Um, and just kind of rein him in technically. But I do think that there's a lot to work with, and he could be very good.
Well, the nice thing about him too is he showed up to the Senior Bowl and really did elevate his stock, which
Yeah.
is what you want to do. I mean, he's a Ole
Mm-hmm.
Miss guy. It's kind of an afterthought place for quarterbacks. And Lane Kiffin's system there is okay. It's a pro style system, but it's also, they don't throw the ball around a lot.
They don't.
Um, but he's a guy that came into the Senior Bowl and just really kind of solidified the fact that he was the best quarterback that day or that week, at the
Mm-hmm.
Senior Bowl. And I certainly probably caught Seattle's interest with that because they really do scout the Senior Bowl quite heavily. So let's talk about the other guys in the next group. So if we looked at Quinn Ewers, Will Howard from Ohio State, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, and Riley Leonard from Notre Dame, how would you kind of rank those? And what are if you want to talk about one over all the others or whatever, why don't you kind of do that, Keith?
Well, I think that the next guy on the list would be Will Howard from Ohio State. Now, I will preface all of this and say that Ohio State quarterbacks are typically really hard to evaluate because they tend to just have all the advantages around them. They play behind, the best offensive line, and they have receivers that can get open on every play. And I mean, like,
Right.
Ohio State's
Right.
had first round wide receivers in the last three drafts. And so it's things like that. Like you saw um, Justin Fields. It was a hard evaluation, and it turned out that a lot of people got it wrong and had him way too high. And I'm worried about that a little bit with Howard because he plays with a lot of clean pockets, and so there's that. But looking at what you can see I see a guy that has good footwork. He's got great size at 6'4", 235, a cannon for an arm. Um, pretty athletic and his ability to move around and make guys miss. Um, and yeah, there's a good short, catchable ball. That was good down the field. I mean, there's a lot to like there, but I wonder with um any Ohio State quarterback, and it's not a knock against the player. It's a knock against my ability to evaluate. Can he hit those long passes where he's throwing a dime into tight coverage? Um, because when he throws those passes in his college tape, the guy is wide open, and if he has to stop and wait for the ball, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that too, where the ball was just a little late, but it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot to like, and I agree with your assessment that he's right there with Jackson Dart. I mean, it's 1A, 1B for me on that as far as a quarterback that you could realistically go forward with. It really would require the evaluation to go to dig a little deeper and really try to compare apples to apples with your prospects.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of have to remove him from that Ohio State thing and really look at the technique, the quality of how he breaks down defenses, the ability to lead, the ability to step up in big games, um, the mechanics, all that kind of stuff. And I think he has all the tools that you like. I like him actually. And for me, I think, he probably has a, late second round grade. For most people, I think he's probably got a mid second round to early second round grade for me by the time it's all said and done. I think this is a guy that's going to end up moving up. And earlier I said there's a couple of safe options, safe quarterbacks in this draft, and I think he's one of them. I don't know that he necessarily comes up and becomes a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. He could, but I think that his floor is a really nice quality backup that could eventually work into a decent starter in the right system. And Seattle is one of those systems. Like if you in the way that Mike McDonald wants to control the ball, to be able to have a kind of a quick passing game, feed the ball to your running backs and have a physical running game. I think he pairs well in a West Coast style offense with the timing and all that kind of stuff. And I think you'll see a lot of that out of Clint Kubiak. And a quarterback that really kind of takes care of things. He had a 73% completion percentage, obviously with those added things at Ohio State, even if it was 68%. I think that would still be a quality quarterback in the right system. So I think he's got some upside. He would be one of those developmental guys, and so I think you're okay if you expend a second round pick on a guy that you want to sit behind Geno and see what you've got in 2026. I think that's a shot, especially if you do all the evaluation. That's worth taking. Seattle at some point has to take that shot. Geno Smith is not going to be around forever. You can kind of kick the can. Maybe you can find another Geno Smith in free agency. There's Kirk Cousins sitting out there this year. It might be a little bit less expensive if he's going to get cut out of Atlanta. But at some point, I think you got to take a shot at a young guy. And I would feel comfortable, I think, if we were to spend a second round pick on Will Howard.
Yeah. I would not hate that in any way. If they're on 18, if they move back to 29 or, something like 28 and end up with him, I'd love that because you pick up the extra picks in order to give your 2025 team the talent you're looking to add in the draft, but still get a guy for the future. And I just think that he has the potential to be a guy that develops into a good player. I would put him. I liked him as a prospect greater than or more than I liked Kirk Cousins as a prospect. And you remember Kirk Cousins went fourth round, so that's kind of the thing. But Cousins has also had a really long, successful career. So to kind of put that in perspective, there, I just want to say that I'm less confident in the quality of my evaluation with him than I am with other guys, and it all has to do with not him. It's the guy. He just plays on a team that's got so much talent, and it makes for a harder evaluation.
So there's a couple other guys that are interesting to me, but not interesting enough to where I'd want the Seahawks to draft them. And that would be Quinn Ewers and Dylan Gabriel.
Mm-hmm.
For me, both are fairly even as far as where they are with draft grades, but they're completely different types of quarterbacks. Dylan Gabriel is a small guy, 6 foot, 200 pounds, 4'8", 340. So he doesn't give you that upside on a smaller quarterback that sometimes you get. He's not going to be athletic and move around a lot. He's older. He's 24. He's going to be 24 and a half years old by the time he gets, in the NFL. Limited athleticism. The nice thing about Dylan Gabriel, he's a winner. Everywhere he's gone, he's won. He's the most winningest quarterback in college football history. And that's because he's played for so long. He like fifth year senior, almost
true.
got him to the national championship this year. I just really like that aspect of a quarterback, a guy that has the ability to lead everywhere he's gone. He's become a leader within that system and so forth. so forth. But I think his limitations outweigh the upside with him. I think he's a backup in the NFL. I don't see the upside of a starter at some point. Now he may be elevated into a starter role because of circumstances, but I don't think he's just out there earning a starting role, out of the get go. And so I would pass on Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah.
Same thing can be said for Quinn Ewers. There's just something there to me that's a little off, and it's just the inconsistency with Quinn Ewers and not showing up in now he did show up at in the big games a couple times this last season, but historically he's just kind of not shown up all the way, and he's played
Well,
on some really pretty decent teams, and I'm just not enamored with him.
so here's what you're going to run into when you look at his tape is that when he has a clean pocket, he looks like a quality quarterback. And the moment he has to move from his spot even a little bit, it completely breaks down.
The
Um,
nice thing about him is he's 21 years old, like
yes,
in
he
in
is
young 21.
a young 21-year-old 3-year starter at Texas
Right,
too. Played against
right.
some top flight competition. Played on some good teams. Won a lot of games. And is a guy that can continue to develop, but plays kind of flat-footed in the pocket. And if you get pressure on him, you make him move off his spot. His mechanics break down a little bit, and he's not as accurate.
Agreed.
And
Oh,
it's that
totally
problem.
agree.
The guy he reminded me of when I was watching his tape was the guy that came out of USC as a first rounder, Barkley. Do you remember him? I think he was drafted by Arizona and flamed out and never did anything. Um, and the same thing. It was looks great when the pocket's clean, but doesn't have great footwork. And when you move him off his spot, everything just falls apart. Um, and I would be worried about drafting him. I don't think he's going to have a grade above 4. I'm not 100% completed with my evaluation on him, but I've currently got him, 4th round kind of grade. Like I just
Yeah.
don't see him as a great prospect now. At 21, he can become a significantly better player than what he is right now. And
Yes.
I would be willing to, if you can get him later and then stash him and develop him and really get the um, get the talent to come forward a little bit better, it could be great. But it's a it's a low floor, high ceiling kind of situation. That low floor has me worried.
So one of my favorite prospects in this draft cycle that Seattle, I believe, will consider that's realistically available would be Riley Leonard, the quarterback out of Notre Dame. I like him. I like his physicality. I like the ability that he has to run. I like the leadership that he has, all of the things. So 6'4", 216 pounds. He's got a frame, though, that he can add on a little bit. 4'5", 240, which is a
Hmm.
really great upside, age 22 and a half. So that's going for him. That speed, though, that ability to move around in the pocket and then escape and get you first down or pick up yards when things break down is really an upside. I like the arm talent. I like you know a lot of the things, but it was limited at Notre Dame. Like they don't throw the ball down the field a lot there.
Hmm.
They their running game is strong. Um,
Plays out of the
I
shotgun almost exclusively at Notre Dame.
Yeah, there's
So,
not yeah, right, not a lot under center, but I don't think that's just a factor of the offense that he was in. I don't think that he has the inability to make
hmm.
adjustments, but it's going to take some time. And currently, most people have him going in the fourth or fifth round. And I don't think by the time it's all said and done, I think this kid ends up going in the third round. And if he's sitting there at 82 and Seattle's on the clock and they've taken care of some interior offensive line needs, some defensive line, maybe an edge rusher, corner, or whatever, and he's sitting there, it's an option
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I think that he's one of the better developmental prospects in this draft, and I would put him on par with Will Howard
Interesting.
in that respect. And in just the upside. I think the upside is the same.
How old is he? He's
20
22 and a
22.4
half.
years. Yeah.
So that means he'll be, um, yeah, I mean, he's not an older prospect, but he's also not, 21 like yours. Um, so he's kind of in that middle range. What I would say with him is this is a guy that needs a good quarterback coach because his lower half is awful. He will throw from the weirdest platforms, even in a clean pocket, and it hurts his accuracy. You he needs to tighten up his mechanics, especially on his lower half, um, just a lot. And he can't get sloppy with it. When he has his feet set right, he looks really good and throws a fantastic ball. But far too often, even in a clean pocket, he lets his feet get sloppy and throws from just weird platforms, and the ball either sails on him or goes low or um,
Or it's late. Yeah.
yeah, and so he just needs to um, tighten that up. I you go through and you look at quarterback coaches around the league, and the guy that he's a head coach now, which doesn't make any sense to me, but Brian Schottenheimer, I'm like getting him paired with a guy that could coach quarterbacks the way Schottenheimer did would be great for him. Um, but if you get him in with the wrong team, the wrong coaching staff, you could just be wasting a pick.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly it's a shot. It's a shot
Hmm.
on a player that you feel like has all the tools that you'd like to see and needs work on a few of the things that need work. And so to me, I think expending a third round pick or a fourth if he's there on a player like this would be an ideal kind of thing for Seattle. And you could still go into the year with Geno Smith. You'd have to make a commitment, and Sam Howell. You'd have to make a commitment to have a third quarterback on your roster because you couldn't put this guy on a practice squad.
No.
But um, I think that based on the need that Seattle has, and based on the time that Seattle has to develop a guy, this could be a viable option.
Yeah. Agreed. I think that um, given where Seattle drafts and where they are, if you're not going to take a shot in the first round on a guy like Jackson Dart, um, to get your future quarterback, and you're starting to look at, okay, let's find a guy that we can draft and develop and have him be ready in a year. Um, you could do far worse than Riley Leonard.
Mhm.
Like the guy can play. You just
Now,
gotta tighten up his mechanics.
if there's a quarterback out there that is more ready to play, especially in a Clint Kubiak offense in 2025, and you were just in a desperate mode, a guy like Kyle McCord could be an option, or a guy like Tyler Show, who's 25, will
Ugh.
be 26 by the time he sees the field. But there are skills there that you can
Yeah,
work
but he
with.
doesn't
Like,
have the arm talent. His arm is so limited. He not only is he 26, or he's going to be 26, but he just doesn't. I don't think he has the arm talent to succeed at the next level. I think he's a guy that's going to go play in Canada.
yes, that's possible, but he did show up at the Senior Bowl and was easily the second best quarterback, and potentially say that he was the first quarterback at the Senior Bowl as far as just sheer talent level. And Louis Riddick from ESPN said this guy could be the steal of the draft. I'm just saying that there are evaluators out there that feel slightly differently than you do about
Yeah, I
show as
know.
far as being better
Um,
than a Canadian Football League guy.
I'm just
And
telling you
we'll
the
see. I just the age wise freaks you
watching
out. I get that.
watching tape. He's going to be 26 before he plays a snap, and I just watch the tape. I see a lot of balls that just take forever to get from his hand to the receivers because he just can't put velocity on it,
This
even
is
when
the
he's got a
quote that
clean pocket.
this is the quote that freaks me out the most about potentially fitting in Clint Kubiak's offense in Seattle. This is also from Riddick. I said it down there in Mobile. I said it during the regular season. I'm going to say it now. If you put him in an offense like Sean McVay's, like Kyle Shanahan's, like Kevin Stefanski's in Cleveland, this kid is going to surprise and be the steal of the draft, in particular at quarterback, Riddick said. He could have added Clint Kubiak to that list
Oh yeah,
of offensive coordinators because that's exactly what he So for me, you have a Lewis Riddick who's a decent evaluator
he's a good
saying those
evaluator.
things. I think that you should probably pay attention a little bit, and I think if that is true, he would be on Seattle's radar because it's a system fit.
Sixth round.
Yeah, yes, of course. Yeah, you're not going to draft it, but he may end up going earlier. Now, the consensus big board at NFL Mock Draft Database, which they do 100 big boards from everywhere and a whole bunch of mock drafts as well, kind of dictate that board. He's a seventh round prospect, 241 overall currently.
Yeah,
But
that's
I'm telling you, supply and demand is going to probably
I know.
dictate that guy goes in the sixth round, fifth round, whatever.
Yeah, 26 though.
And he's going to go into the combine. He's going to throw well. I disagree with your assessment on his throwing ability. I think that he can really drive the ball. He's going to be one of the best throwers at the combine. I just think that there's a lot to overcome here with this kid, and you gotta if he is going to be a system quarterback, he's got to be successful right away. This guy is at the top of his development already. You're not going to have time to develop him in the nuances of the NFL because of his age. And so it's such a it it'd be like bringing in a veteran quarterback at age 27 into Seattle to kick that can down the road a little bit further. Only you've got a guy that has no experience whatsoever in the NFL, and to me it wouldn't make any sense for
Yeah.
Seattle to draft a guy like this. But somebody's going to draft a guy like this, and if it's going to be a team, it's going to be a team that has a system fit for him, and Seattle is one of those.
Yeah. I could see like I said, sixth round. If he's available, there, and Seattle wants to take a flyer on a guy to get him into camp, see what they can do with him, and that kind of stuff. With the idea that you could probably get him through to the practice squad. Um, okay, I. But if you're taking anywhere before that, I think that just feels like not a great pick. I mean, especially
That
when
is
you
an
could go.
interesting strategy, Keith, is to put him on a practice squad, and that would dictate almost a seventh round pick, which is where his grade's at.
Yeah. I just advance it to a sixth round because it's quarterback supply and demand. And so okay, if it's in that range, I would still be okay with it. But anything before that is dictating more that he's going to end up landing on the roster, and I don't see it. I don't. If you're going to do that route, why would you not take Curtis Roke out of Indiana
Or
instead?
Kyle McCord, one of those two. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're talking about a guy who's younger. He's six. This guy, Curtis Rook, is 6'5", 233, and can he's got the ability to um,
He led the
throw the ball.
country in
Just
passer rating too.
I mean his mechanics don't need work. They are clean. They just look really nice. He gets a lot out of his natural talent. Um, you know, he's not as athletic, so you're like, okay, is adaptability and his ability to extend plays when everything breaks down is what you have concern with. He's more of a traditional pocket passer, and I know the NFL is slowly pivoting away from that to the more mobile quarterback. So that's going to drop him down. He's also going to be, 24 by the time he's drafted, 24 and a half by the time he plays a game. Um, so he's an older prospect, um,
But he's a
to me,
timing
he's
quarterback. Yeah. So
although to me he's a significantly better prospect than O'Rourke. I'm sorry, than
show
Shug.
Shug.
That's right,
They call him Shug actually.
Shug,
Um,
not
Tyler
Show.
Shug. Tyler Shug.
Okay, Shug.
Yeah. Yes. I agree that you would probably end up drafting a guy like Rourke before Shug, just from the standpoint of development. He's got 2 years. He's 2 years younger, and he offers you the same sort of skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. And to me, that's about it as far as how deep we need to go in the draft. Talking about these guys, there's some other guys um, that show some interesting upside, but you could talk about the next 20 prospects, and they'd all kind of be in the same bucket.
Yeah, and
But that's about
anyone after Shug, I think, is um, probably not going to be drafted. We got some undrafted free agents, and I just don't think we need to go that deep in the draft in these discussions.
agreed, and I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared to go any further
You mean
today.
you don't
That
want
was
to
a
talk
lot.
about Donovan Smith out of Hawaii? Or no, Houston. Sorry, Houston. Reading my notes wrong.
The crazy things that everyone out there doesn't realize is that you sit and we watch tape. You just don't watch highlights. You watch plays that are bad as well.
You
So
have to.
you try to get a feel for all the things over the course of like 10 prospects. That's
Mm-hmm.
hours. I mean, we'd spend hours, and this is just one prospect um, show.
Yep.
We got to do that for the running backs and the tight ends, the wide receivers, the interior offensive linemen, the offensive tackles, and then the defense. So we do a lot of work to kind of put these things together, which is great, and it's good for us because we really get to learn
And it's fun.
um, the prospects really well. Yeah, and it is
Yeah.
fun, and we enjoy it. And the first and foremost, and we've said this before, but it's been a couple of years, but we kind of do this show for us in the larger scheme of things. We're really happy that people sit and watch and enjoy it in these conversations and discussions as much as we enjoy having those discussions. And that's the added benefit. But really, honestly, it's just you and I meeting up at the local bar, sitting down for a beer and having a Seahawks conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the way that we've treated this thing since the beginning, which is crazy, Keith, because we're going to now start our 9th season here in about a week. Which, and that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
633 episodes right now.
Yeah, in about a week. Which, if I remember right, we're gonna have kind of a new look for our ninth episode. We're gonna um not have the green screen back here and have a different kind of background. So we're gonna
Yeah,
try that out and see what it looks like. And I don't know, it'll be weird. We've had the green
yeah.
screens forever.
I'm gonna have initially. I'll just have a gray wall with some white stripes running through it. That's going to be my background initially, and
Wow.
eventually I will have a bookshelves and all that stuff. I still have this big huge drum set in front of me that I still have to get out of here, out of this room before I can move my desk around a little bit. So it's going to be a
Yep.
minute for me, but
Oh, you're gonna see a
yeah,
guitar and canvas painting of what was Seahawks Stadium at the time and is currently Quest Field or CenturyLink Field, but to
Lumenfield,
keep Quest.
Lumenfield.
Oh, it's all right. It kind of keeps changing names.
You've listed
Um,
all of them now at this point. Yeah,
yeah. But it was from when it was Seahawks Stadium. But yeah, that's what you're gonna see behind me. Mainly just because I'm turning my desk and it's gonna point that way. And you won't see the green anymore. But yeah, fun stuff.
yeah, yeah. Right on. So next time we come back, we will pivot to I think running backs
Yes, we
is
are.
our next show. It's an exciting class. Seattle may or may not be in the market for a draftable running back, and we'll have to kind of see because we do have guys, but you're always looking ahead a little bit. You got a guy like Ken Walker who is coming in on a contract season.
Hmm.
Does he fit the style that Clint Kubiak has? In theory, yes, he does. Does Charbonnet fit the style that Clint Kubiak runs? Well,
Yes, he does.
yeah, right. And Kenny McIntosh, yes. But also, there's this hanging thing over the running back room that Mike McDonald really wants the identity of the offense to run through that room, and he wants it to be physical. And I don't know if Seattle has the running backs on the roster, with the exception of Charbonnet, who are really physical. Now I know Kenny McIntosh is, but he's a smaller back.
Hmm.
Do they want like a bigger guy that's 225, 230 to be able to exert some more power into that room? Maybe. And there's some guys in this draft that are pretty amazing, like all the way through, like round 5, 6. And there's
Yeah.
some depth guys. There's some guys that are going to be undrafted that would have been drafted in the 5th, 6th round last year. I think I watched somebody the other day. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was even Mel Kiper. Somebody was like, I've got 35 draftable grades on the running back position group this
Well,
year.
we will not be talking about 35 players next week.
Yes, true. But we will select a few that I think are good fits, good system
Yep.
fits for Seattle. Well, let's
Cool.
focus on that. All right. Find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk, same place. Also still over at that other place. You can find the show at Seahawks Playbook Podcast and on your favorite podcast platform, Spotify, all that stuff. And then our YouTube channel, and hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, share it, and like it. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.